Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know you might not have submitted any questions, but there are some questions that other people submitted. I would like to entertain them before we take your questions, if I may. Or if you have questions, you already made the trip, you can ask your questions first. You have no questions? Okay. So the first question I have here, a sister says, I work in a supermarket. Sometimes I have to handle pork and alcohol because I work as a cashier. Is that okay? The answer is, it is not okay because selling anything prohibited is prohibited. Okay? And the cashier is the person who does the sale. So does this also apply on somebody who is shelving the shelves with products that are prohibited? Yes, it does apply. Does it apply to someone who moves those products from one spot to another? Yes, it does. So what should a person like this do? Because she seems to know that there is a question about what she's doing. So the issue of haram is not exactly what the question is about. It's about what can I do? What could a person do who would die unless he drinks alcohol, that is the only thing available, or eats a dead animal, which is haram also, right? They eat or drink as much as it keeps their life, but they don't fill their stomach. Okay? A person working in the supermarket may be selling one bottle or two of alcohol a night or a day, right? But then they must be selling a lot of other halal things. So as far as the income, it looks like because of the conditions in which this kind of work is made in this country, it looks like there is some excuse if she doesn't have any other work to survive on. But if she has a husband and he's making enough money to feed the family, there is no excuse. What if she is the head of the household? She's a single mother, she has kids to feed. What can she do? Again, she can take this type of work only as long as there is no alternative. Under one condition. What is the condition? The condition is she should be seeking this alternative work, which means she should not settle for this as the only way to earn her living. Otherwise, it becomes dependent. Her income will become dependent on that kind of business, which is not okay. So, any question regarding this issue from anyone? Yeah, so you're suggesting that there are other halal opportunities in a non-supermarket grocery stores where food is not the sold product. Okay, anyone else? Okay, the other question is, also it's about work. I want to know, is it haram for a woman to work outside in an environment where men and women have to work together? Working with men has certain conditions that have to apply. If a sister works only with women, then this should be a relaxed atmosphere for a woman. Because if, for example, her clothes do not cover her or something comes up, then she is among women. That's easier. Well, what are the conditions then that she has to comply with working with men? Number one, to dress fully properly, whatever could be regarded as very protective clothing, so that she is not covered, she is not, bending or doing something and somebody's looking at her. She has to take those precautions because she's working with strange men, okay? Or men who are strangers. So the other condition is she should interact with them only as necessary, not to make friends. And these are two different issues. So she should be in the environment only to get the work done, not to get people to admire her or to accept her or to chat with or anything like this. Number three, she should lower her gaze, as the men should lower their gaze as well. Okay? The same conditions apply to men working with women. So this is not going to be one-sided. It works both ways. Also, if she is working where she needs to handle men, like for example a nurse in an elderly home, or a nurse in a nursing home, or in a hospital, and she needs to address the needs of men. Well, basically, she needs to be careful to observe the rules of interactions. So strangers for her are prohibited, which means she cannot uncover a man, she cannot change a man, there's a lot of things that will be, but then in this society, those are the basics they ask you to do as a nurse, right? So I would prefer for nurses in particular to be extremely cautious and careful, and to always try to avoid situations where she is alone by herself in the room of a patient and the room is closed and nobody could come in. Those situations can be unacceptable. Same work for physicians and nurses, and likewise doctors with women. نفس الشيء. It's the same thing for men who work in a hospital as doctors or nurses or assistant nurses or assistant physicians. The rules apply in the opposite way as well. Okay? Huh? Because dental services are almost done in an open room all the time. You don't get a dentist who closes the door because there is no reason to close the door. So it's mostly very different from working as a nurse or a doctor with the opposite gender.
So another question is, like, my daughter wants to go to medical school.
Yes.
So should I discourage her? I mean, thinking.
No, you should not. You should encourage her to work, but you should also encourage her to learn the rules of her profession so that she can choose a specialty where she feels more comfortable as a Muslim, like gynecology or internal or children, pediatrics, for example, or eye doctor or dental, anything that gives her maximum comfort as a physician.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, sure.
So, like, I was a physician, but now I've stopped working. So, like, considering my life, I could not continue after I had the children and everything. It didn't work, like, it was very difficult. So now I have stopped working as a physician. So, thinking that, I feel that I should discourage my daughter, because will her family life, like with her husband, will it get difficult if she goes for a medical profession which asks for a lot of time?
Well, I don't know how much this kind of profession is attractive to your daughter, but I believe a physician is someone who can manage their time better than anybody else. They can open the clinic at the time they want. They can go to the office and alternate with somebody else. They can schedule themselves in hospitals the way they want, as much work as they want.
True, but that is after they get their license. But there are 12 to 14 years before the license. So pre-medical, then medical school, then residency.
No, pre-medical is undergraduate studies.
Yes.
So those do not count. She has to do this,
No, I mean,
whether in medicine or something else.
yeah.
So we are only talking about the years of medical studies
Yeah.
and the years of medical practice. medical study, she has to have a 3-year medical school or 4-year medical school, and then 3 or 5-year medical training, residency. So those are the years that.
Because in case of a woman, it coincides with the time she should get a baby and everything. That's why, like, it's a long time, right? 12 to 14 years.
But if she has the stamina and the ability to go through this to serve the community, we definitely need female doctors. There's no question about it. So to deprive the community from her resources, despite her interest, is not in our interest as a community, even though it may be her interest as an individual, but somebody has to do this. So if she wants to be in a short-term training, then she needs to go for dental or pediatrics. These are the shortest residency programs. Yes.
Yeah, some nurses also, they have some, I'm talking about nurse, they have like about 20 patients, but those patients, they cannot choose, they have female and male, what can they do about that?
To observe the rules, that if she goes to serve a man in his room, she could always ask for a nurse, another nurse or assistant nurse to be with her so that she is not alone in his room. And she should not be doing certain things that would violate her integrity as a Muslim.
Yeah, for example, some patients, male patients, they need dressing, and some of them, they have to be exposed and to do the dressing, for example.
The dressing and the washing and bathing, all of these are activities. If she could get a male person to do it for her and she can do his female patients, that is an arrangement that some people may accept, some hospitals may refuse.
Yeah, because what happens is sometimes some nurses, they assign those patients.
I understand. I heard your question. Yeah.
For that, they cannot say because of against their religion, they have to choose or they have to change. Once they give you the assignment, you can't choose.
Well, I wouldn't change my approach or position on this issue, because if we do as Muslims, we would lose our integrity in our own conscience with our faith. So, well, wherever there is something about saving a life, like if a nurse is working in the emergency room and there's somebody bleeding anywhere in their body and she is the one available to save their life, or he is the one available to save her life, they need to do it. But if it is a matter of services that others may do, then I will keep my position that somebody else has to do it. Remember, the halal food industry that we have today came as a result for Muslims insisting on eating Islamically slaughtered meat. And because we offer the market and the resources, our children have a lot of halal resources now. If we said the other meat is also halal, which is true, okay? From a fiqh standpoint, the other meat is also halal, even though it is not halal according to some fiqh opinions. But no, the jumhur is, it is halal. The majority of scholars say the supermarket meat is supposed to be halal if it is slaughtered properly, okay? So the only difference between this and the meat we slaughter as Muslims is the tasmiyah, to say Bismillah. And when Aisha asked the Prophet ﷺ about this, that meat comes to us as gift from people we don't know whether they said Bismillah or not, he said, you say Bismillah and eat it. Again, he is presuming that the slaughter was right, because the Arabs used to slaughter their animals even before Islam. Okay? So when we insisted that halal is the best health-wise and religion-wise, and we insisted to support halal meat stores that popped up in the early 70s and late 70s, we established a market for this product. And now America is discovering that they would rather eat halal meat than regular meat because of the health benefits of what is slaughtered as halal. Likewise, the zero interest was not available for car sale, and now it's not available for housing, right? But in the beginning, it was the car was like a house, and everything only went for interest. But when we insisted on zero interest, we got the zero interest market. Okay? So I believe the more we give up on our expectations as Muslims, the less we get and the less we make a market for what we want. So we need to be cognizant of what we lose when we assimilate our culture or leave our culture to work with established customs. So there is a price to pay. Yes.
So if you, like in my workplace, I have to meet with the men, like in one room, like there is nobody in there. So you're saying that
You're talking about meetings?
yes.
Yeah, if you...
Nobody else is there, only me and the other person, and he is a man.
Are you doing counseling?
No. We talk about something like lawyers, like we talk about some case or something.
Yeah.
And
For confidentiality, you have to close the door and keep it private. And, well, my daughter is a lawyer, and I advised her to have a glass office, a glass door, so that the privacy of the talk is kept, but not the privacy of anything else. So I would advise you to look for something like this.
so you're saying that until that we have this environment, so women should not go out and work. Like you said that we demand the halal food, that's why we get the halal food. But right now the environment is not favorable to Muslim women. So what should be our...
Well, this is true also for Muslim men. A Muslim man who is a lawyer, right? He also needs his office to be closed for privacy. I would advise him also to do the same.
But man has to bring the income for the family. Women are not like required to bring the money to the family, right?
Yeah, if she doesn't have to do it, and this is a discretionary income, then the question becomes less necessity. That's the point. So, but I'm answering assuming that this is something necessary for her. So if it is necessary, definitely have a glass door. And by the way, what I'm saying is applied not only in my daughter's situation, but I know lots of Muslim lawyers who are doing the same thing. When I came to Al-Hijrah, which is a masjid, right? My door didn't have the glass on the door, and I asked the administration, I need a glass door so that I can meet with sisters, protect their privacy, but enjoy no more than the privacy of our discussion. This is a way we can keep to practice transparency and to avoid the shaitan coming in or the rumors started to spread about what we're doing. Okay, yes.
About halal food, so like eating restaurants, just by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's okay to eat, or it has to be halal food?
I said, despite the fact that the meat in the market is halal, when we insisted on having a truly Islamically slaughtered meat, right? We developed a market that now became known to everybody, Muslims and non-Muslims. And it became a good reason for others to come and eat at our halal restaurants. So I'm not saying that it is haram, I'm saying it is halal, but if you have a store that you own and a store that your neighbor owns, where do you go to buy? Your store? That's the point. By the way, when halal meat started, I was in Texas at the time. It was the late 70s. And people were complaining about how is it that the halal meat is 3 times more expensive than the meat in the market, because that was the price. And I was telling them, this is the volume. Once we start giving those stores the volume the supermarket has, they will start lowering the price. If we let that first store close down because there is no market, nobody would want to invest in the same business again. So we have to be careful not to close a potential good market. But as far as the fiqh is concerned, when I have to eat in a restaurant, I personally, for my own taste and my own caution, I pick a halal restaurant. Okay? Because it's health-wise better. Islamically, it's much more certain that I'm eating halal. And I also have to say Bismillah anyway, whether it is meat or not. So I believe we are better off doing what we know is better. And we are safe if we do what is okay.
But if it's not halal, I mean, I'm just...
No, I answered that part. I said it is halal, but I said all what I said after. Yeah. Okay. We're taking questions. Do you have questions? Brother, do you have questions? Okay. So we got these 2 questions. I have one more, and then we can take more of your questions again. If women earn money, who has the most right on that income? Well, the Quran gives us an answer to this. The Quran says, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا. For men, there is a share of what they have earned. وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ. And for women, there is a share of what they have earned. A share means portion, right? And where does the rest of the income go? Whether men or women. The Quran is saying everybody has a share, men or women, of what they earn. So where does the rest go for both, men and women? It goes to be spent on their responsibility. So if a woman is spending on her children because she is a single mother, then it goes first on her responsibility. If a father or a person, a brother, is helping one of his parents or the 2 of them because they are old or sick or poor, then after he spends on his immediate family and his parents, the rest is his. The rest is his. Likewise, after the woman spends on her responsibility financially, the rest is hers to handle and to deal with it any way she wants, provided that it is in good cause. Okay? So she cannot be extravagant or spendthrift or stingy, or she has to be moderate, as the Quran tells us all to be moderate when it comes to spending. And everybody who has a financial responsibility towards himself and others, they have to cover at least the basics of those needs. After the basics, and the man or the woman are saving money, this money being saved is theirs to spend any way they see fit within the Islamic frame of work. Okay, so let us now define what are the responsibilities, financial responsibilities for men and the financial responsibilities for women in case both of them are working and living together. Well, the man has to cover all the basic expenses of the family, which is everything they need, because this is the contract of marriage. Allah says, وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. So the leadership and responsibility of the men is to spend on their wives. What about if the wife is rich and she has a lot of resources? Then she has the responsibility, if the man is poor and cannot cover the basics, to help chip in. Khadija radiallahu anha, she had a business, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked in the business, right? And he got a salary for managing the business, right? And Prophet Muhammad, as we all know, used to spend, even to borrow money to spend on charity. So did we ever hear a hadith where Khadija was discussing money with the Prophet? What did they actually do? She never asked him. When there is a need, the money is between 2 or 4 hands is the same. So we never heard about this. Okay? So the rule is the man is responsible to spend on his family, provided that he can afford to cover all the basics for everybody. If he is poor and he can barely cover the children, but he cannot spend on his wife, for example, or if he spends on his wife, he has to struggle with the kids, but she has money, then she needs to spend on herself, because in this case, she is responsible for herself. Okay? What else? Like the man, I'm sorry, I just want to finish this. Like the man, when he needs a car to go to his business, he has to cover the expenses of the car from the income that he brings home, right? So what he brings home as a net after expenses will exclude the insurance of the car, the gas, the mechanic, all of that stuff. Tickets, if he gets tickets. Likewise, if these costs are going to be the only way a woman goes to her business using a car, then all the car expenses will have to come from her income. What about if the car is used for her business and for taking the kids to school and for taking the kids to the doctor and for this and for this? Then definitely some of those expenses will have to be covered by the man, because that is his responsibility. The dynamics have changed because the society structure have changed. And we also notice that the one source income for family is almost gone from the world, not only in the West. Everywhere in the world now, men and women have to work. This is the current economic structure, which is very disadvantageous for women. Because besides working, they have to work as moms, they have to work as wives at home, and they have to hold a lot of other responsibilities besides being an accountant or a doctor or an engineer or anything else. So that is very disadvantageous for women. I would rather prefer that we go back to the one source income, because this is the norm. Women have to be mothers, they have to become pregnant and take care of the kids for at least 5-6 years until the child is able to even express himself clearly as to what they need. So by the time they raise one child to 5 years, 5 years is gone of her professional life. The second child, another 5 years are gone, then her career is gone. If she does her responsibility at home. So what I'm saying is, yes, they can keep the money after the basic expenses. Now the other question is, could a woman who is married and working, quote unquote, to help her husband cover the expenses of their livelihood, they and their children, could she spare some money and send it to her mom or dad or sister who are needy? The answer is, if their basics inside the family are not covered, no, she cannot. But if the basics are covered and she is able to save some money, that saving is hers to use any way she wants. The same thing with the man too. After covering the basic needs, he has the right to use any saving beyond that to cover a needy brother, sister, mother, father, any one of those. Yes.
My question is, suppose the basics are covered, but the wife knows that the husband doesn't like her to spend on her parents. Then what?
Then she needs to explain to him what the Quran says. That's why I started with the Quran. Huh? If he doesn't listen to Allah, that requires a private discussion. Because now we're talking about character and personality.
So one related question, which is like, I want to say, if the wife's parents don't have another good place to stay, but the husband does not like the parents staying in the house, so in that case, if the wife cannot do anything for the parents, will that woman be held responsible in the eyes of Allah?
If she can't, then she can't. It is like if a sister who is married, her husband wants to bring his family in, but she's not comfortable with his mom or dad for whatever reason, right? Can he force them on her? No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. But we should, all of us, should be considerate so that we treat each other's in-laws in a way as if they were our own parents. But absent that ideal world and coming to the real world, we definitely know that Allah does not force us to do something that we can't. How could we force each other to do something they can't?
So is it true that a woman does not have any financial responsibility towards her parents? Is that true?
Unless she has money in the saving and they need the basics.
Suppose she is earning and the family is not in need of her full money, but I have heard in my culture they say that the woman has no responsibility towards her parents. Only a man has responsibility.
Towards what?
Towards the woman's parents. No financial responsibility.
For your parents,
Yeah.
as a sister.
Yes, as a daughter.
So I understand. This assumes that your parents are not in need and they are wealthy, healthy, they need not any of your help. Then you are not obliged to help them. But if they are in need and you have what can help them and they don't have but you, then you need to help them.
So it is not that Islam is
Men and women, when it comes to being kind and good to our parents, are required to do the same thing.
the thing is that they say, yes, you have to be kind and good to your parents, but you don't have to spend money on them.
So I go visit my mom and she doesn't have dinner, and I hug her and kiss her. I tell her I love you, and my refrigerator is 10 times full, and I leave. Is this love even?
But if you can afford it, you have to help. If not, then you don't have to.
It's about resources. That's all. Okay. So who has the most right on that income? We explain that question. I hope it's clear. Okay. Any other question? We still have 20 minutes to go. Yes.
Yeah, about the interest for the mortgage, buying houses.
Yes.
Because now there is many companies that they say they
Yes.
comply with the Sharia law.
Yes.
And some people are saying no, it's the same thing. They're just giving it different names called murabaha instead of interest. So if I have a house now and I'm paying interest, may Allah forgive me, but I want to switch to this company, but we're not sure if it's really Sharia law or not. Is it?
I need to see the contract, because judging a business transaction has to be subject to understanding what the contract is actually saying. So short of seeing the contract, I cannot make a judgment.
But they don't say interest.
I need to see the contract, the language, the structure, how the transaction works, and even the amount they charge as profit also has to be considered, because I can structure a contract that it has no interest, but I can replace the word interest with profit, and I charge you 10 times as the interest would be. That is zulm, that is not right. So I will need to see the contract to make a judgment. Each one of those companies have a bunch of scholars that they call religious council, and they approve their structure of their contract. So if you want to track those scholars and ask them what is halal, what's haram, on what basis do you agree to this, this is similar to this, and challenge what they are doing, you could always do it. If the company has transparency rules and they give you the scholars, their contact information, you could do that. If they don't behave with transparency, you will have a hard time getting who's approving their transactions.
But in this case, if we, and also they raised the mortgage very high. So if we cannot afford the Sharia way, is it the riba? Is it because also some scholars they say if you have to, then it's not considered riba.
No. There is nobody who says it's not considered riba. That riba is not considered riba. No scholar.
It's not a business. You're not investing it. You're living it in the house.
But they never say that riba is not riba. Riba is riba. Even if a scholar says under certain conditions, if it is necessary that you could not avoid, then they say it is jaiz, which means allowed, but it is not halal. What Allah makes haram is never halal. Like, for example, if I'm dying unless I eat a dead animal, right? And I eat it, does this mean it became halal? The same thing. So it doesn't change the hukm. The rule is the same. But do you have a license of necessity to use this license to buy something that you and I know it is haram? That's the point. The point is about the license. And all scholars that I know of, they never say that riba is itself halal for a person. They say allowed, because this is how the fiqh works. And you allow as an exception to the rule, but it doesn't change the rule. The rule is riba is haram. The license is it allowed under certain conditions?
So who will decide those conditions? Like the person who wants to buy the house, they have to consult with
They have to consult with a scholar to say, this is my situation and I need or I want to buy a house. Does my circumstance allow me to use the license to buy through the bank? Then an informed scholar should be able to help you with that.
I have a question about interest. Like we use these credit cards, and I always pay within the time period.
Grace period, yes.
Yes, so that there is no interest. But suppose sometimes by mistake I forget, and I get maybe a little bit of interest, maybe once only. But I request the bank, but they do not waive it. They said that we cannot waive the interest. So there is no way. I already got the interest. So what do I do in that case? Is there some kafara or anything?
You know, it is like when somebody says, if I left my stove running and I went out of the home and I came back to find that everything is burning, call 911. Because you crossed the line. And this is not something we should take lightly, like forgetting, or if you use the credit card, number one condition, never use it without having the money to pay within the time. Number two, never use it if you are a person who is not disciplined to pay on time. Number three, never use it if you are absent-minded person and you tend to forget this bill and that bill and that bill, don't use credit card, because you will fall into riba more times than you care for. So these are the three conditions. Don't buy without having the money. Don't buy if you do not have the discipline. And don't buy if you are absent-minded about paying your bills on time. And that would require that I manage either to pay through my bank automatically, or to have an accountant given access to my bills to pay my bills on time, and have all my bills to go to that person.
So actually, the situation, it's a true thing. It was not even I forgot. It was I didn't understand the rule, because there was a 0% loan which I could take on the credit card, and I had taken that loan and I used it for some other purchase. So I paid back the purchase immediately, and I thought that I will have no interest because I have a 0% loan, but they took the money and put it into the loan, so my purchase was still unpaid. That was something I didn't know. It was something beyond my knowledge.
Yeah, and when it comes to money, you must read every contract you engage yourself in. If you consider the small print lines that they are a nuisance for you, don't sign the contract.
So like this, if I made a mistake, I have been asking forgiveness to Allah continuously, and I totally stopped that account so that I never do that again. But I mean,
Inshallah, Allah will forgive. So, because in every sin that we do, Allah opens the door for tawbah. Inshallah, Allah will forgive. Inshallah. Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if that sister should come to you, but because she has a house, and she was asking me to ask you that her basement, according to Fairfax County, you cannot rent out the basement, but they are renting out the basement. So she is asking if that income is haram because they are not, complying with the
County rules. Why is her basement not allowed to be rented?
Because in the basement you cannot have the kitchen. You can rent it out, but you cannot have the kitchen. But she had the kitchen and she rented it out.
So she did the kitchen against the code. I wouldn't encourage or support anyone to go against the building code in whatever county they live in, because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says very clearly, لا ينبغي لمؤمن أن يذل نفسه. It is not allowed for a Muslim to subject himself to humiliation. They say, would anybody do that to himself? He says, yes. They ask him, how does it happen? He says, by exposing himself to some sources or authority or anybody to subject him to humiliation, then he has humiliated himself. So if, for example, I trample over somebody's rights, and they take me to court, and the court judges me and sentence me to some time in jail or fines and stuff, I have exposed myself to this because I knew what the consequences are. So if the county comes and says, you work against the code, this is a fine, and you have to destroy this kitchen, they are exposing themselves to all of this trouble unnecessarily. The Muslim should always protect his credibility, his integrity, and himself, and his interest. And one of the ways that Islam guides us to do is what you mentioned. Follow the law of the county or the state where you live, because that protects you as a person. Yes, sister.
If I want to do Hajj, is it true that if I have like a loan, I have to pay it first before I can make Hajj?
If the loan will be covered by the cost of Hajj, or at least a good chunk of it, then yes. But if somebody is taking a loan from the bank to be paid on 5 years or more, that loan, long-term loan, if I save the money, then the only way for the Hajj not to be compulsory on me is to use the Hajj money to pay my loan. So if it is a credit card loan that could be covered by $8,000 to $10,000, I should pay the credit card loan first. Okay? If it is a loan from my neighbor and he has been patient with me for some time and it could be covered by 5 or 7 or 10, whatever the cost of the Hajj is, I should pay back the loan first. But if it is a house and I'm paying it on 30-year extended loan, I cannot put off the Hajj for 30 years and I have $10,000, $20,000 in the bank and say, I don't have money for Hajj. Why? Because I have a loan. But you have saving. Yeah, I am keeping this for emergency. So this cannot be played out like this.
I also heard people say that since they have the house mortgage loan, they don't have to pay the zakat.
Zakat?
Zakat.
Zakah is on the savings. After you spend on your basic necessities, if you still have money that you put aside, if this money reaches the zakatable level, you owe zakah on it. So the zakah cannot be at the expense of my basic needs. You see the difference now?
But their reason is that they have the house loan that is for 15 years, so instead of paying zakat, they can like.
Zakah is not on the mortgage bill. If my mortgage is $4,000 a month, right? And my income is $10,000 or $15,000 a month. Combined income, myself, my wife, my child who's working, whatever. So every month I pay the $4,000 mortgage. What do I do with the rest? No. I am saving $4,000. What are you saving them for? Oh, for the college of the kid. What about the man who doesn't have food next door? And he needs to eat today. You want to save your money and deprive this person. If you're saving $10,000, that means your zakah is $250 a year. One time in the year. So those $250 are going to break the bank. So when does a person who has bills and mortgage and all of this not pay zakah? If he's not saving any money up to the zakatable level. But if you're saving up to a zakatable level, which is about $4,000 or $3,800, whatever the number is, and you have this in the bank for one full year, you didn't touch it. It never went down below the zakatable level. Why don't we pay $25 on every 1,000? I think it's much simpler than what we make it to look.
Because I want to know like how we can, we pray, we do everything, but it's not affecting our life that much that it should be.
Yeah, the best of questions always come at the end of time. But we will keep your question for next time because we have to go for Isha prayer. But let me share something with you. Why isn't our salah affecting our life? The number one reason is being oblivious during the prayer. So we make wudu and we don't pay attention what we're doing. We enter the salah and we don't pay attention whom are we standing before. We finish the salah and we don't know even how many rak'ah we have made. So how could this type of prayer benefit us? So the body attended to the prayer, but the spirit was absent. The heart was absent. The mind was in the bank or the hospital or somewhere else. So how could this kind of prayer help us develop anything different? So when we focus on what we do, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ says. He says, a person does not benefit from any part or portion of their prayer except the part of which they were mindful. Mindful means attentive, focused. You know what you say, and you mean what you say, and you know what to expect from Allah, and you want every word to count for you, right? Then your salah definitely will be different than your neighbors, including the imam. But if we pray and finish, the mechanics of prayer are all good, then the fiqh is covered, but the spirit is not fed. So you don't have to repeat the prayer. The fiqh is covered. You made the takbir, the ruku', the sujood, tasbih, everything. You went by the book, but your spirit was not attending, and your mind was absent, your heart was not engaged.
Not for sure.
Yeah. Khushu' means stillness. And you read this in the Quran. وَتَرَى الْجِبَالَ وَتَرَى الْأَرْضَ جَامِدَةً. Another ayah, هَامِدَةً. Another ayah, خَاشِعَةً. So, to be motionless is the utmost khushu'. How does this apply to anything other than the body? The qalb is called the qalb because it's always turning things around, always considering stuff. But when it is in khushu', it is still, which means it focuses on one thing and one thing only, which is what you're doing. In terms of our duties as far as life goes, it's called focused work. Sometimes we call it sincerity. Sometimes we call it dedication. When he's doing something, don't interrupt him because he's not going to pay attention to you. Why? Dedicated, devoted, focused, attentive is the words that we use to describe that person. So likewise, when we are in total khushu' in salah, our hands are not going to scratch our head and fix our clothing and wipe clear our glasses or answer the phone or anything like this. All of what we do is put our hands like this, which is the utmost form of submission, handcuffing ourselves, knowing that we are standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we do this, then this will become a show and a sign of our khushu' in salah. Does this answer your question? Okay, the best for last. Inshallah, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And if you have any questions, you could text them to Brother Yusuf or email it to him. He has email also. Or join the WhatsApp group. He can tell you how to do that. So if you send your questions early, whatever question comes to your head, just write it down. We'll bring them, inshallah, next meeting. We meet every other week. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. زين وإياكم.